It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I am your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to be with you today. As always, I'm sitting here in the Furman Garner Performance Studio at KUAF. You guys know I talk about it all the time. KUAF is my home now. It has been for over a year at the time of recording this, and I certainly appreciate the folks here. And I got to tell you, I grew up on public radio, and it's always been the difference maker for me. And so I'm a big fan and a proponent of public radio. We need to have public radio until the end of time. And so I would encourage you to support this station in any way possible that you can. One way you can do it, of course, is by listening to this podcast. But then you should also listen to Ozarks at Large, where the podcast is featured every Tuesday. And so I would just encourage you to check out Ozarks at Large. I would encourage you to listen to 91.3 FM KUAF. It is an amazing station. And again, I enjoy being here. And one of the things that I always talk about is how I got here and why Northwest Arkansas is so special. And you guys know that I'm doing a series on NWA transplants, people that have been here in the last, 10, 12 years or less that have called Northwest Arkansas their home, that have decided to make something special with this place. And the next guest that I'm having on here, guests, I should say, that are coming on the episode are no exception to that rule. Brittany and Amin are transplants, literally are transplants to Northwest Arkansas. And that's actually in the name of their Instagram handle, NWA Transplants. That way you don't get it confused. It's very clear. But I met this dear couple a couple of years ago. Shout out to Nick and Meredith Caston. We got to meet each other, and I'll never forget it. We were at an outdoor event. There was a DJ group going on, I think, Her Set, Her Sound, and some other stuff. And so there were libations flowing about. There might have been a little bit of food there, but that's where I met the couple. My wife and I were there with Nick and Meredith, and I was like, oh, this is a cool couple. And I'll never forget Brittany looking closely at me, and she was eyeing my teeth as a dentist would. And it turned out she's an orthodontist, and she was like, "Are you wearing a retainer?" Or I don't remember the line of questioning, but I was like, "Wow, she really has an eye for detail." And so we had a conversation about I think at the time I was using those Candid. Candid was the company I was going through to use the dental thing that I was using for my teeth, and just to fix an accident that I had back in college years ago. And so, nowadays it's hard. I can barely afford to pay for my kids' orthodontic work, much less pay for mine. And so that was the option that I chose. But my kids go to a normal orthodontist, and I'm so thankful for the amazing orthodontists that are here in Northwest Arkansas. And we'll talk more about that later. But Brittany and Amin, I want to welcome you to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. It is so great to have you both here today. How are you doing?
We're good. We're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to jump into it. And as I was kind of alluding to at the beginning, one of the things that I wanted to paint a picture, especially for people that aren't from Northwest Arkansas that are coming here, just to kind of understand what this area is all about. And I would be interested to know how you viewed this area before you actually got here. And then tell us a little bit about your origin story and, literally how you ended up here in Northwest Arkansas.
Sure. So I'm from Buffalo, New York originally.
And I'm from Toronto, Canada.
And we didn't know a soul in Arkansas prior to moving here. So we really didn't know anything about it. And what you don't realize when you don't live here is that outside of here, Arkansas only makes the news for something terrible. If Arkansas made the news, it's a bad story that's happening. So it started in probably January of 2020. Mm-hmm. Amin was graduating residency that year and starting to look at jobs. And we knew we didn't want to stay on Long Island where we were at the time, but we weren't really sure where we wanted to go. and a job came on the list in Arkansas for Amin. And I was like, absolutely not. You can go to Arkansas by yourself. I am not coming with. I'm like, you're from Canada. You don't even know what Arkansas is.
Well, I originally thought like Arkansas was close to California. So I was like, this is great. We'll move closer to California.
And I was like, I'm not exactly sure where it is, but I know that it's not close to California.
Right.
So I was a hard no at this time. But COVID hit in March of 2020. And I think for a lot of people, including us, that has a way of changing your perspective on some things. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden the world shut down, and dental in particular shut down. And I had a job that was going to bring me back on Long Island, but Amin was going to be graduating in June of 2020 in a dental world that wasn't really hiring.
Yeah, you could only find like part-time jobs if you were lucky at that time.
Because they weren't expanding. Because everybody was in fear of what was going to happen and cash flow, and people didn't want to hire. So there wasn't much left on the list anymore. And we looked at North Dakota before Arkansas. And I think that helped the decision. North Dakota is a very flat land.
Yeah.
And it was cold. It was like April, May, and it was freezing, and we hate cold weather. And then we came.
Did you actually visit?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
we actually visited.
Okay. So y'all were serious.
Well, it was COVID, and I was unemployed. He was doing like remote learning. And so we took a chance. Yeah. No, it doesn't make any sense now looking back.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I think everybody, it's funny you say that. It's like everybody ventured in at least that first 6 months after everything shut down. So if you go from March 2020 through like September 2020, things were just kind of really weird. Because like my wife and I, we were talking about the fact that, you remember how our kids went out on spring break and never came back? That's literally what happened. This time in 2020, they went on spring break and then they never went.
No more.
And I'm like, man, you guys are here every day. What's going on? So,
Yeah, we were only supposed to be home for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we landed in Northwest Arkansas, and everything was green, and it was hilly, and there was so much nature. And we stayed at the Carnal, the Inn at Carnal Hall in downtown Fayetteville.
So when you walk around there and you see all those, like,
the
sorority row,
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like that stuff we used to see on TV and in movies.
Right.
And we went on a hike, and we went to downtown Bentonville, and we started to feel like this was a place that we could see ourselves living. And my mom told this story at our wedding when we were first looking for where we wanted to live. She said, make a list of your priorities. And this was earlier. This was pre-COVID. But it was like close to the ocean, an international airport, access to an NBA team because Amin likes to watch basketball.
Okay.
A metropolitan city, like a small, big city. I don't think we really got any of those things. But we realized that there were certain things that we didn't prioritize before that we really prioritize now. Like we love the nature. We love being in this like ever-growing community. And if we want to see an NBA team, we can take a drive
to OKC. Yeah, you have options. It's funny because like you didn't get the ocean, but you got Beaver Lake.
Yeah.
That's right.
You didn't get the NBA city, but we're about to get, we have a minor league baseball team. Every year, one of the fill-in-the-blank Arkansas college sports teams is a legitimate contender in something. One of them just depends. And then you always have the option of driving to OKC, which is 3 hours away for NBA. You can go up to Kansas City for Sporting KC, the Kansas City Chiefs, the World Championship Kansas City Chiefs, and the Kansas City Royals. So you've got a lot that's really not that far away.
And soccer is coming
and
here
soccer is coming. USL, shout out to USL Arkansas, because that's going to start up in Rogers in a couple of years. It's going to be amazing. And so, you're absolutely right. You don't, you can make a list of the things that you want. But then once you come and experience Northwest Arkansas, sometimes you end up modifying that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what happened for us.
Yeah, that's literally what happened.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me what your thoughts are about, you come here. Did you feel like you were going to have a hard time kind of getting to know people? What was that aspect of it like? Because, it's one thing just to relocate and maybe had you found a job before you got here, or did you find a job once you got boots on the ground?
So Amin came for his job first, and we actually did long distance for 9 months during COVID, which was super fun.
Yeah.
10 out of 10, just a blast. Especially there was a lot of travel restrictions during that time too. So it was a little tricky. And I interviewed for a job at the same time that we came for Amin, and that's my partner now. But at the time, he was like, all right, like, I like you. This is cool, but we have to be at 50% capacity right now. So, like, we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like, be in touch. See you soon. Like,
yeah.
And so we waited. And then probably around the fall, he was like, all right, the restrictions have calmed down. Like, let's get you back out here to take a look and go from there. And I'm really thankful for that. For finding people, I think the first people we found were in the dental field.
Okay.
That just happened to be how it worked for us. Since then, our community has definitely expanded, but we're thankful for those first people.
Yeah.
That was probably Connor for you.
Yeah, that would be Connor.
Yeah.
And then from there, he introduced me to other friends. And then there was other events.
How did you meet Nick and Meredith?
That's a great question.
Did you meet Nick and Meredith?
I don't remember. It must have been at an event.
Or I wonder if they friended or connected with you.
Yeah, I want to say it was Instagram.
Yeah.
I want to say it was Instagram, but I can't remember what like that first event was.
But and people laugh when you say that, but the reality is that's how I've connected with a lot of people. It's via Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, it really
absolutely.
is. Totally.
Yeah.
And like every day I'm fielding comments or questions. Like I just got a question from somebody that has a shop up in Rogers, and they were like, hey, we've been big fans of yours, would love to connect with you, would love to invite you out to our grand opening. And I'm like, I don't know these guys from a can of paint.
Yeah.
But that's one of the real positive benefits of social media that I think is that, you know, it does make the world a little bit smaller in the sense that you can connect with people that you wouldn't maybe normally run into on a daily basis. But because of the way that we set up our profiles and the way that we use them and tell stories, people connect with you because they see mutual interests. And then they say, oh, well, you know, that Amin he's interesting. I want to find out what he's all about. That Brittany, there's something about her. I love the way she tells stories. So I want to check in with her.
I remember we met them at like a book reading.
Oh,
I remember now.
That sounds like Nick and Meredith.
Yeah.
So.
It was some sort of like, it was like an interreligious book reading where it was like gathering people from all different cultures, and we just thought that was a really cool spot to be at. And when we walked in, I think it was Nick who yelled, "Is that NWA Transplants?" And that was really the first time that we were like, quote unquote, recognized.
Right.
I would be
pretty
the first.
small. That was the first time.
Funny. Yeah, I remember.
So that was them. But yeah, I always tell people to do the things that you enjoy because you'll meet other humans who enjoy that too, and you'll have that in common.
Yeah.
Amin was volunteering at a dental clinic, and that's how he met his first friend.
That's right.
And then he introduced him to other friends, and it kind of goes from there. And the social media, people who like social media gravitate to sometimes the same spaces or the same events. That's how we met Joseph, the hanker peddler. And so we end up at the same, openings a lot. And we find a lot in common.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
I love that too. And Joseph's a great guy. He's been on the podcast. He's actually has sat where you're sitting right now, Brittany. And he's been on and talked about his exploits, and just a really interesting individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, everybody has a story to tell around that. And so I'm glad that we're getting to kind of sit here and hear your story. So now that you've been here for a couple of years and you've had a chance to evolve and grow, what is the biggest surprising factor about Northwest Arkansas that you weren't aware of before you got here? But now that you're here, you're like, man, if I had known this would have been the clincher. This would have put me over the top from a decision-making perspective about moving here.
Yeah. I feel like the growth, and you can say the growth, but not really like understand the growth.
Yeah.
There's so much happening at any given time, not just like events on the weekends between Fayetteville, Rogers, Bentonville, Springdale. Like every one of those squares is also growing with constant new places. The Greenway is constantly growing.
Yeah.
Like people talked about the Greenway a lot, but I didn't understand really how expansive it is, how much work goes into maintaining that. There's constantly a new playground. When our nephew visits, we're like, we got a new playground.
Right.
And they're not wood chips. We've got like state-of-the-art playgrounds here.
I know.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
And we'll go like when we were at the Momentary and it was an event, all of a sudden towards the end of the night, free water bottles are being handed out. And we were like, oh, how much do we owe? And they were like, no, it's free.
It's free.
Like,
that would not
this water
happen.
bottle would be $20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially coming from like New York City and anything like that.
You're
just expecting to pay for everything.
That doesn't happen where we come from,
Like you're partying all night and they're like, here's a bottle of water for free.
Right.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Stuff at parks. There's like free popsicle things being handed out. Like it's just, I don't know. It's a really growing community in a really fun way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I agree with you. Like I said, and I was telling a couple that I met with before we sat down for this podcast, that this is one of the most giving places. And I know people that listen to this podcast get tired of me saying that, but it is the truth. And it really doesn't get old in saying that, because I think it's important for us to be able to have these conversations and just share with folks what we're all about and what we're doing. And so I think it's important for people to know what makes a place special. And what makes this place special is that it is a very giving environment, and that people are really friendly. And, the constant refrain that I always hear is, how can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's just, and that's nice. I mean, it is in this day and age where everything is about an instant take, if you will. There is something refreshing to that kind of mindset. And I'm not saying that we are oblivious to that, to anything else here in Northwest Arkansas, but I think that people, when you get here and when you interact with individuals that are from here, you realize that, oh, okay, these people are different, and they act differently in terms of how they want to treat you and how they're seen, and they want to be seen. And so, I think there's something cool about that. And that's why I wanted to have these conversations with people that are from other places, because you have different perspectives. You know what it's like on the East Coast, and things are different. Like you said, I mean, there's an expectancy that, hey, I've got mine, you go get yours, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know that you necessarily feel that way here.
I think it's also similar to like dentistry and why we moved here for the dental world, because we can treat patients the way we see fit.
Yeah.
That was one of our priorities that we realized, were that we didn't want to work for a corporate company telling us how to treat patients and not being on the ground and understanding what is the right thing to do at that time for that specific person. It's not a cookie cutter treatment. Like it has to be individualized. And sometimes in these bigger entities that gets lost.
Yeah.
And we were willing to move out of, the Northeast in order to do that. I mean, we both have student loans. So it's not like we could just like open our doors and pay $2 million for a space. Like we wanted to come here and own a small business and treat people right.
Yeah. And that's something to be said. And I'd love for you maybe just to expand upon just this whole idea. And this wasn't necessarily part of the conversation, but I mean, I think dental care is like hugely important.
Yeah.
Right. I was that kid that grew up. I was at the dentist twice a year, getting my teeth cleaned, going through the motions. I remember I got braces at the beginning of 5th grade. And why that was important to me was because I was going to get them out before I entered into junior high school. I did not want braces when I got to junior high school. And it was back in the day when, headgear was still a big thing, and wearing rubber bands in your braces and all that other stuff. But I can remember all that. And I'm always thankful for the sacrifices that my mother made for me to go to the orthodontist and have braces put in. And it helped me throughout my life. And because I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people struggle personally if they don't like their smile. Like that's real talk, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't realize how it impacts some people. And I've seen some videos of folks that talk about, well, I don't like to open my mouth because I don't like how my mouth looks. And so I think, dental health is really important. As a matter of fact, it's one of if the lack of dental care and dental health leads to a lot of diseases. It leads to arterial, the addition. I don't play a doctor, but it does. I know it does lead to the plaque ends up in your bloodstream and it causes problems.
No, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, to me, those are things that people need to be aware of. And I know in certain areas, I know in Appalachia, a lot of dentists do a lot of work to try to educate people about dental hygiene and the importance of it. But even in Arkansas, it's a challenge here, historically. And so it's the kind of thing where, what you guys do on a regular basis is hugely important, because it's just somebody has to have that conversation and encourage people that, hey, there are options for you out there. Mm-hmm. So, but I'd love for you just to kind of, share your thoughts around that. It's not so much to hype up what you do as dentists and orthodontists, but it just to drive home the point of dental hygiene and the importance of it.
Yeah. I think preventative care is important. So I'm an orthodontist at Storms and Swiderski Orthodontics. And people come in and they're like, oh, yeah, like I'm interested in braces. I haven't had a dentist in 5 years. And I'm like, okay, well, number one, we're going to need to get you a dentist. And they're like, why? You can't just make my teeth straight? And I'm like, it's not just about making your teeth straight.
It's not a vanity thing.
Yeah.
It's not,
This is about the function of your bite. This is about the health of your teeth. I want you to have a beautiful smile, but I want it to be healthy. And I feel like we're one of these industries that it's like, okay, when it's just, a small cavity you need to get filled, that's the least expensive option. And we're like, hey, do it now. This is the least expensive option. And everybody's like, no, I want to wait until it's the most expensive option. And then I'm going to treat it. And it's like so much about dentistry is about preventative care, but that can be a tough thing to communicate and to educate the public about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to add anything to that?
I think she said it perfectly. Actually, the preventative care is the cheapest and the smartest way, like you're saying, by brushing your teeth, or even when you have those malaligned teeth.
Yeah.
Having plaque buildup makes it really difficult then to brush. And getting those cleanings twice a year,
it's huge.
It's huge. It's something so simple can help. So I agree with both of your statements.
And help save you money in the long term.
Yeah.
Well, I think, we live, it's so funny. I know at the end of the evening when my wife is ready to get ready for bed, I hear that water pick go. It's like routine. And I grew up with that was like in my head, I can hear that water pick when my grandmother would turn it on every night. And it was always like, I've never had like gum health issues and all that, but all that plays a role, and people don't understand how your whole health, it can be tied to the health of your mouth. And so I know people that are listening to this episode are like, was this going to be an episode about dental hygiene? But listen, I try to communicate to the whole person here at I Am Northwest Arkansas, and we like to have these conversations. And I think sometimes it's just good to have a reminder about some of the little things that we could be doing to live our best life, right? And that's really what it's all about. So.
Yeah, and it goes a long way. Just the simple things like you're saying, the water pick.
Little things.
Yeah, it does.
And I think there's a storyline on Grey's Anatomy right now about how she had an untreated dental infection and that gave her cardiac arrest. But
yeah, it's real.
Yeah,
it is real.
Grey's Anatomy is doing a lot for the dental community.
Yes,
right now.
Absolutely. You got to love that. So, but speaking of living your best life, you guys you almost fell into the whole NWA Transplants thing, right? Because I would imagine that when you started your Instagram, it was just to kind of chronicle what you were dealing with and going through, and maybe telling a few stories here and there. But it has since taken on a life of its own. Would you say that is pretty correct?
That's it's a great.
Yeah, it definitely, it's got its own, growth to it now too.
Yeah.
And connections that it makes for us with the community. And when we first started it, it was just, I think our original why was to show people what it was actually like. Because when I was moving from Long Island, I'd be like, okay, your next doctor is going to take over. I'm moving. And they'd be like, where are you moving to? And I'd be like, Arkansas.
It's like, what?
Yeah, immediately.
They would always be like, but why?
I know.
And then I got here and I told people like, hey, I just moved. And they'd be like, oh, where'd you move from? I'd be like, New York. And they'd be like, but why? Like, why would you come here? You went the wrong direction.
Right.
And so for us, this was the right direction. We kind of wanted to showcase why. And I said it before, but the only thing we knew was bad things on the news. So we kind of wanted to show the good things and what this area is really like when you're living there. And it's definitely changed and evolved. When we first started, I think we were doing photos, and now we do more reels and really kind of showcase events and different food spots and experiences too that we have, just to give a window into what the community is like. Because, and people say like, oh, Northwest Arkansas is not Arkansas, but it is.
It is.
In the same way that like people might say New York City is not the rest of New York, but like it's part of New York.
It is.
Northwest Arkansas is part of Arkansas. You're going to find a lot of different areas, and no matter what you're into, you're going to find your people. When we first visited, this was another thing that surprised us. That first visit was in May of 2020, and we were coming off of, I think, downtown Fayetteville somewhere.
That was on College Street.
Okay. And then we saw one person in a truck holding a Black Lives Matter sign.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I did not think I would see that in Arkansas. And I'm like, we got to take a picture because no one's going to believe me. And we turned the corner. I don't know what street we were on, but it was a mile-long protest.
I
I remember.
Was that on Dixon?
It was right here on the square. There was a huge
right
outlet.
on the,
Basically, it was standing room only on the square, and the Washington County Sheriff's Department was out there and everybody else. And there were several individuals that were kind of speaking and they were doing kind of a Black Lives Matter march around the square.
But I was floored
that
because we did not think that we would see that here. We were impressed by one person in a truck.
Right.
And I think the first Pride Parade had like 20,000 people that we were here. But there's also bikes, blues, and barbecue. Like there's so much that whatever you're into, if it's motorcycles, diversity, different markets, it's here, but you might not know that. That's not really something you can Google. Like, what's here that I might be interested in? So we show the things that we go to, and sometimes we promote other things that we might not be able to make it to, just so we can kind of be that connection for people. And it's not just transplants. We get messages from transplants like, hey, real talk, what's it like there?
Right. People ask me that too.
Real talk.
Like real talk. Because actually the couple that I met with today was like, yeah, we were looking at some statistics on violence, and we were like, what's the real deal? And I was like, I kind of chuckled because I was like,
what?
Well, first of all, coming from right outside of New York City. And
I was in Detroit.
And going to school in Washington, D.C. at the height of the crack epidemic, I'm like, there's really no violence here. Not like what you think of. There are misunderstandings.
Yes.
But I won't call it like outright violence, right? This is not the South Side of Chicago. Nothing against that, but we're nowhere near that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but we're also a connection for the locals. Like in the beginning, my team members at work, they were giving me suggestions on where to eat. And now I give them suggestions. Yeah. So it's like things, even as people who live there their whole lives, they just didn't realize it exists because it's not something you necessarily Google. You kind of need that whole round experience.
You do. And you really do. And that's what I like about kind of watching the evolution of the NWA transplants. And I'll certainly put that in the show notes, but I would encourage everybody listening to follow Brittany and Amin in NWA Transplants at NWA Transplants on Instagram. They really do tell some great stories. You guys have partnered up with people like the Walton Arts Center and others. I loved when you went in and you interviewed one of the teachers that was working with the kids. My kids, when they were homeschooled, went through that program. That program is amazing.
Yes.
First of all, it's like legit. And that's how my kids kind of developed a love for theater. And you would think, that stuff doesn't happen here, but it does. Mm-hmm. It really does. I mean, a lot of people don't realize Theater Squared educates over 20,000 kids every year.
Absolutely.
In the arts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot. And coming, we're a state of 3.2 million people. That's a lot of people. And so there are a lot of things that you wouldn't think happen here that do.
Oh, 100%.
And it's like, it's like as soon as you start scratching just beneath the surface, you're like,
yes,
oh, wow.
That's what happens.
There's some really legit things going on.
Yeah. And there's a lot of theater. Like those are probably the two biggest, Walton Arts Center and Theater Squared. But Perry Allen is a new one that she came from New York and started. Arkansas Public Theater just went into some huge renovations. Ozark Smokehouse Players, I think they're called. We went to the old Ozark Smokehouse building.
Yep.
And it was this really cool performance in this kind of like circle seating. There's just so much cool stuff and I didn't see that online. Somebody at work knew I was into theater and was like, oh, I'm volunteering there. You should go.
Yeah.
Like it's very word of mouth, but there's so much here. And you don't have to pay New York City pricing for parking.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's huge. Sometimes you don't even have to pay for parking.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that is something when you come from a bigger place and then you come here, you're like, wow, look at this. Yeah.
Because like if you go, like you go into New York City, it's like I'm always carrying like $40 or $50 in cash because I know I'm going to have to park somewhere and it's going to be, I don't want to come back with a boot on my car or my car gone. So,
absolutely.
So these are all first world problems that we just don't have here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think again, you guys taking it upon yourselves. And I think it's important for people to understand that you didn't get permission. There was no playbook for how to do this.
Right.
I think you just kind of found what worked and told your story. And what I have appreciated in just watching the arc of your growth on NWA Transplants is that you guys have remained uniquely you, which is important, right? And you've taken some of the sensibilities that you have internally as the individuals and human beings that you are, and you've applied it to your ability to tell stories. And so and certainly as an encouragement to anybody listening that has kind of been on the fence about wanting to get out there and maybe seen some of your stuff on social media or others that they'd love to emulate or maybe do is what would your advice be to other people about, just getting out there and documenting and not necessarily creating, right? Because that's like Gary Vaynerchuk. That's what he always talks about. Document, don't create. Just because people are interested in you being you. Yeah. Right. That's why reality TV is so big, because people want to see people in their natural habitats. And so I'd love for you just to speak about that and how that's impacted you.
Yeah. Definitely authenticity is important, doing what works well for you, especially, or like what feels right for you. Some of the like Gen Z styles never feel right for us. So we don't do those, but they're a different style that other people do. And we like to say it's better posted than sitting in the library. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because like we'll do it and you'll be working on it and you're like, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's like, just post it. Because you can really get sucked down into this rabbit hole of like, it's got to be perfect. And I think that
would be the best thing is just
post it. Like it's better like good and posted than perfect and in the library.
Exactly.
Because then nobody sees it at all.
Because that's what we originally did at the beginning, was we have a lot that was just unposted because we didn't feel it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to change either. Because I mean, originally it was photos.
Yeah.
And now it's reels, and even our like video style has changed a lot, and just kind of go with it. You can spend so much time kind of nitpicking, and the social media world can kind of suck you into that. Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. But
this many hashtags, that many.
Yeah.
You go down a rabbit hole. Like,
I know.
Exactly.
So don't get too sucked in. Just kind of try and enjoy the process. For us, I'm on camera a little bit more. Amin does a little bit more of the editing, probably a lot more of the editing. But it is a team process for us. So it's something we enjoy as a couple as well.
And I think that's what makes it a little bit easier for us, is that there's two people.
Right.
So
right.
If I didn't do something, she'd be like, have you finished it yet?
Yeah.
We can hold each other accountable.
I know. And it's important. I had Anela Malik on, and
we love her.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's awesome. Feed the Malik. And I'm sad she's moving.
No.
Yeah, she is moving back to DC. But she told me that NWA is always going to be in her heart, and that she's going to come back here frequently. But, it's just a different season for her that she's in. And so I'm really excited for this next chapter for her, but she was kind of doing that. And one of the things I remarked to her was like, man, I'm amazed at how you're able to do all that you can do by yourself. And I mean, she has some people that help her with some things, but she primarily does mostly all of that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of work on the back end that goes into
there's
it.
So much work on the back end.
You don't have the support of a network or, a bunch of assistants and all that other stuff. So you have to get quickly well-versed in the ins and outs of your iPhone or your camera of choice, how you put stuff out. And I love how your storytelling has evolved, because you have a really humorous side to you that you like to tap into quite a bit. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, you should just be serious and tell stories about what makes Northwest Arkansas so fun. But I think part of the charm of what you do is that you have a little bit of self-deprecating humor where you can just have fun with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, where you just have fun with it. And it makes me want to watch it more. And so I think that to me is one of the beautiful aspects of social media, is that you get a side of a person that you may not normally see unless you know them, intimately, and you connect with them all the time. Yeah. So that's why I like following certain people online that I either know or know tangentially. And I'm just like, oh, let me see what they're all about, because then you can kind of see that. And I'm like you, I say better shipped than sitting around hoping for this elusive, perfect shot that you get.
Exactly.
And that just never happens. Mm-hmm. And I like having fun with it. And I've actually found, and I'm sure you've found this, that some of my best stuff has been stuff that was almost by accident.
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Yeah.
Well, there'll be some stuff we'll edit, and I'm like, okay, cool, we'll post it.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, it does great.
Really
well.
I'm like, what?
How did that happen?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I shot, so there was a Ozarks Bagel Company who used to be over here by Pink House Alchemy, right on North College, and now they've moved up to Bentonville.
That was the food truck?
Yes, the food truck. And I shot a reel with them and just told a quick 45-second story about how much I loved their salmon and everything bagel. And it was so good. And I just kind of shared that. And it was just a couple of quick clips and a quick story. I think the whole thing ran like 31 seconds. And before I knew it, that thing had been viewed like 6,000 times. And I was just like, wow, I had no idea. And I was literally going to scrap it.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be like, this is one of my most watched videos. It's crazy.
You can't predict it.
No, you can't. You really can't, So, yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is, is that especially when doing things that I'm doing here, I know most of my audience is either in this area or looking to come to this area, which is kind of cool. So it's not like I don't have people on all the coast and everywhere else around the country. I have friends that have really big followings on Instagram and other social media channels where they just have interactions with people from all over. The thing I like about my interactions are most of the people are around this area or have some relationship to this area. And that kind of makes it fun. And it also makes the experience a little bit more intimate from a social media perspective. I don't know if you found that.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely find people that are close-knit for you. You'll also find the downside is that other people who maybe wouldn't be close-knit with you can also find you.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to have thick skin at some points. We've definitely had a few trolls. We had one that commented on every single video, and they commented on one from our gym, CrossFit 540, and they said we go to the gym, everybody hates you, we just wave and say hello, but secretly we hate you. And for a second we were like,
really?
Does everybody hate us at the gym?
Yeah.
Right.
And then we went through and kind of got our sense back because they messaged every single one. They were like, oh, we know the sushi owner and he hates you. You don't no, there's no way logically that happened.
Exactly.
So you also definitely have to have some thick skin that not everybody is going to like what you do. And on social media, it's really easy for them to tell you that and hide behind their handle.
Keyboard warriors, as I like to call them. They're keyboard warriors. And I don't ever obsess about them. Yeah. But it is a reality, and we're all human beings, right? So my goal is to kind of be liked, although sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. And I never want to offend anybody, because that's my thing. And I don't want to be the angry black guy. I mean, there's a number of things that each one of us has our own struggle when it comes to that. Yeah. And so I think it's important for us to be as uniquely us as we can be in the process, and then just let the chips fall where they may, because people are always going to be and say what they want to say. Yeah. Absolutely. And then there is that component of it where it's like, is this a Russian troll farm or or the CCP or something like that, where you're like, wait, where are these comments coming from? Because you just never know, right? That person may be 10,000 miles from here.
Exactly.
Just, trying to zet you. And it's like, this doesn't make any sense. So, but no. So what's the future hold for you guys? I mean, you guys are really here now, and you're calling Northwest Arkansas home. I suspect that you're not going anywhere anytime soon.
We like to say that sometimes we meet people and it's like, especially if they work for one of the bigger companies, that this is just a stop on the journey for them.
Sure.
But for us, this is the final stop. Although when you were saying after you want to talk to people 10 to 12 years who are transplants, I'm like, what happens after that? Do we graduate?
Well, you graduate to being Northwest Arkansans. The reason why I say 10 to 12 years is because this area has changed a lot. And so I would say if you talk to people pre the ice storm that happened here in 2009, because there are legitimate events that have happened. So you got people I've talked to that were here during 9/11, then during the financial meltdown, 08, 09. Yeah. Then the ice storm was a big event here because it was a really big event. You talk to even all my neighbors still talk about it fondly. I remember the ice storm. It was rough.
Yeah, that's confusing. We have blizzards where I come from.
Well, right, exactly. And it's all different. But, nobody here, and that's the funny thing, and you could appreciate this, and I certainly appreciate it, that, we just snowplows are almost non-existent.
Yeah, no,
here,
there's one for the whole state to share.
Right. So it's and it's whenever it snows really hard, I just stay home because I know how to drive in the snow. Most Arkansans do not. Yeah, so that's a whole different ballgame.
If anybody even whispers snow, everything shuts down.
Yeah. And there's a run on milk, there's a run on staples. It's hilarious. So.
I'm happy it's a day we get to spend at home.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's do it. So but no, I mean it is cool. I mean, so what do you guys kind of what's the future hold for you as far as NWA Transplants? What are you hoping to do from a storytelling perspective? And just in general, I mean, you guys are going to live your life here and take advantage of this area. And I will say this, I know my wife and I have talked back and forth about, is this our last stop, right? And so what I've said is, because, I never hate putting a finality on anything, because even my grandparents moved from New Jersey after, 40 years and moved back to Pittsburgh where they were from. But I told my wife, I want Northwest Arkansas to be our home base. Mm-hmm. So even when we get older and we want to just have maybe warm weather more frequently, that maybe we go down to Florida or some other place where it's a little warmer for certain periods of the year. It never gets offensively cold here for any long period of time, because if you wait a bit, it could end up being 70 degrees in January or December or whatever.
Absolutely.
But I'd be curious to know what your plans are and what you hope to accomplish moving forward from a storytelling perspective with NWA Transplants. And what would be a story or two that you'd like to continue telling to encourage others about why Northwest Arkansas is so special?
Good question. I don't know if we know exactly where we're going, because it's sometimes you can't see ahead of you.
Yeah.
You're just looking around. We've really enjoyed the storytelling perspective and the Walton Art Center and telling that perspective of how much goes back into the community. One thing we kind of are really just getting into now is the arts and music growth.
Mm-hmm.
That is huge, and it's such a unique community. In Bentonville, we went to Backroom for the first time yesterday for this. It was called a buy or burn auction, so anything that didn't get bought got burned. I think it all got bought. We left. We were tired. But the arts and music district that I think is really going to be up and coming in Bentonville, I think that will be a really fun story to tell because it's still evolving right now. Like, it's really on its ground floor. And I think that's going to be big. There's a lot of big artists coming to the Momentary. John Legend is coming.
I know. Wu-Tang's been here.
Yeah.
I saw the Roots last year. I mean, there's some
Lana Del
amazing
Rey
people.
was here. Like,
there's a lot of things happening.
Deadmau5, Cascade, the Cannons. Like, there's some big people coming to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Nick Offerman is filming right now.
Yeah.
Like, on site. That's some really cool stuff that's coming in, and maybe interviewing a little bit more of the people behind the businesses, because I think they each have a story to tell. Sometimes it can get a little hard to coordinate because they're trying to run a business.
Right. And you guys both have full-time jobs.
And we we'll go somewhere and we'll be talking. They'll be like, so you guys do this full-time? We're like, oh, no.
This is part-time.
Right.
Or free time.
We have jobs during the day that we have to do. And sometimes that can get consuming too, because it's time management that you're balancing. We'd love to go to Hot Springs. I think that's on our list.
Yeah, some interesting stories.
Yeah.
Interesting stories about there's the intertwined relationship between baseball and the mafia. And there's all kinds. Yeah, because there's all kinds of stories in Hot Springs. Hot Springs has, I mean, if those walls could talk, Hot Springs has a lot of history.
Wow.
A lot of history.
So that's not even something that's ever even been on our radar.
Right.
This is the first time I've ever heard
of it. I don't think I heard about Hot Springs until I moved here. We love we've been to Eureka Springs. That's a cool area.
It is cool. It is very cool.
There's so much like cool little stuff in Arkansas, not just in Northwest Arkansas.
And you'll have to go down to the park down there where you can go forage for diamonds.
Yeah.
That's why we're the natural state. So,
exactly. There's so much really fun stuff.
I heard you're supposed to go after it rains. So
is that the case?
That's supposedly that's like the best.
I want to get that. And my mom keeps saying every time she comes, she's like, I want to go down to look for a diamond. And I'm like, all right, we'll have to do that. I'm like,
every once in a while somebody finds a big one.
Yeah, no, they do. They definitely do. So anything's possible. So I think that's great. That's why I actually have a diamond in my logo, and for the natural state.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's just something about that. And diamonds represent something special to me, because there's a story called Acres of Diamonds, which talks about the guy that founded Temple University told this story about acres of diamonds. And essentially the long and short of it is that we all have acres of diamonds in our own backyard. We just often don't go looking for them.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we never discover them because we don't take the time to look at what's in our own backyard in terms of resources, in terms of people and other individuals. And when he tells the story of a man that's looking for this elusive diamond, and he goes off and he eventually just dies. He falls into the ocean and dies looking for this diamond. And then turns out the diamond that he was looking for was right in his own backyard.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of like the whole grass is not always greener in other places. And
absolutely.
And so I think it's always important to remember that. And the thing that I've always taken away from that lesson is that you can find a lot of really amazing things right in your own backyard if you just take the time to look.
I think so too. And I think there's pros and cons about every place that you're going to live.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like no place is perfect. New York isn't perfect. Here's not perfect. No. Florida's not perfect. Nothing. You're going to have your pros and cons.
Yeah.
But it's really, part of it is what you make of it.
Yep.
And highlighting those good experiences that you have. And there's definitely some concerns about a housing crisis in this area and that transplants are ruining it. We get lots of comments like that.
Yeah.
But the housing crisis is everywhere. That's something the whole country is going to need to deal with. But whenever you have a place that is growing and that there's new businesses coming in and there's big businesses that are already here and bringing more in, people are going to want to move.
Yeah.
And land belongs to everyone.
Right.
The United States is for everyone. Whether, it's something that we share as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And I feel that way. And I think, one of the things that I like is that there is an intentionality behind trying to solve certain problems. And the housing crisis problem here in Northwest Arkansas specifically, there is a lot of people and a lot of money behind how do we solve this problem. So I'm encouraged that in the next couple of years, you're going to see more affordable housing being built. You're going to see more workforce housing being created.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be huge. And not to say that it's not happening in other parts of the country, but we're still in our infancy in terms of growth. So we can kind of fix and correct some things right now that we won't have to worry about in 30 years. And so if we're intentional about how we do it, that will ultimately make the difference of how welcoming a place Northwest Arkansas is for everyone, not just those that can afford it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll see. But listen, I want to just say this has been a treat to sit down with you guys. Like I said, you guys with NWA Transplants you have found your own acres of diamonds in your own backyard here in Northwest Arkansas in the short period of time that you've been here. I'm so thankful that we originally had a chance to meet and that we have connected. And I appreciate you allowing me to share your story on this platform. If anybody listening to this who hasn't figured out how to connect with you already on this episode, what's the best way for people to connect with both of you guys online?
I think it would be through our Instagram account.
We respond to messages regularly. Sometimes they end up in that other folder.
Yeah,
and then
which I always have to check. I don't check as much as I have.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll look, I'll be like, oh my God, I have 9 messages in this. And it's because people are not connected to you, so they don't automatically get right into your direct DM folder.
Yes. Yeah. But if anybody has a struggle, then NWATransplants@hotmail.com. We also check that.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all of that in the show notes, and we'll make sure there are a couple of your reels that are absolutely hilarious, including the one that I mentioned to you about the donut caper, which you guys will have to watch because Brittany does some with the wonderful staff in her office at Storms and Swiderski. So I really want to encourage you to check that out, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes so that you can check out. But please follow them, and if you end up connecting with them or seeing them somewhere out and about, and you heard about them first here on this podcast, let them know that.
Yeah,
and just just encourage them and encourage them to keep telling their story, because stories do matter. That's why we press record every week. And we're so thankful for Brittany and Amin for coming on the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. So thank you guys both so very much.
No, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
You're definitely one of our diamonds.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take that. All right, folks. Well, that's another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn more about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Sign up today. You can follow the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it. And also, please consider following at NWA Transplants on Instagram. Please consider rating and reviewing our podcast on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.